Hey guys, welcome back. So for this one, we are jumping back into Avengers Forever, where at this point, we're given a Thor story that's very unique, as Jason Aaron continues to hit us with the "I bet you didn't see that coming" throughout the entirety of this series. But at this point, we're gonna see Thor become One Punch Man in his own kind of way. You know, I feel like it's a lot of stories that kind of mix together to make this happen, but you'll see what I mean. But before we dive in, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, we head over to Earth 56-337, and as we arrive here, we find Thor in the Himalayas, where at this point, he's reached the summit of one of the mountains. And even though prior to this he had been told that no one else has ever ventured out here and returned, to him this was just perfect, because prior to this point, this Thor had been searching for peace, and now that he's made his way here, he believes that he's found it for the first time in centuries. But for this Thor, this moment of peace and celebration, it isn't long lasted, because just moments after he had made his way here, this huge thundercloud comes brewing up, only for thunder to then strike with a very familiar object within it that comes striking down and barely missing him. But it's soon after where we find out that this object is Mjolnir, which has found Thor once again, even with Thor traveling to the ends of the earth to get away from Mjolnir. But also it's here we're told that the Thor of Earth 56-337 is haunted by a Mjolnir that was supposed to be his, and how this hammer should have carried him between realms and between glories unimaginable. But yet and still here we are, with Thor struggling to lift Mjolnir for what is possibly the 5,000th time. And yet again, much like before, he fails to do so. And as we continue, we're shown that this is precisely what happened when the Masters of Evil made their way to the Asgard of his universe. Even then, he failed to lift his hammer, as Asgard burned all around him. And the outcome was later no different when the Masters of Evil made their way to his Midgard and conquered it as well. But even still, regardless for Thor, no matter where he would go or where he would wander, Mjolnir would still follow him. But the constant sound of thunder would only remind Thor of his inadequacy and his unworthiness. And we come to find that this is the reason why Thor journeyed to the far ends of the earth to find the most remote location that he could and get away from Mjolnir. But like we'd seen, Mjolnir still found him. And for Thor, we're told that to him, this is like his hatred and his depression following him and finding him. And for Thor, it's not only the hatred of the butchers who destroyed this world, but it's also the hatred of himself and his hammer, but more so himself. And this leads to Thor punching the hammer repeatedly until his fists are just a bloody mess. But shortly after, Thor is then met by the arrival of Lei Kung, the Thunderer, who in the 616 universe is the immortal martial arts master who trained the young men of Kung Lun. And as it's told, this is the guy who trained not only every fighter in this mystical city, but also any fighter who would eventually become an Iron Fist. And initially, his 616 counterpart had been said to have been doing this for thousands of years. But in Avengers Volume 8, Issue 13, when Jason Aaron gave us the origin of the first Iron Fist in the 616 universe, we were shown at the time 1 million years ago that he was there too. And even the original version of Lei Kung was known as the Thunderer, and he had been teaching Kung Fu starting with cavemen all the way up to Danny Rand and others after. And with the version that we're shown on Earth 56-337, this Lei Kung the Thunderer, he's shown to have had a very similar history as far as his role in Kung Lun. But with him showing up here, the first thing that he does is tell Thor that he doesn't know how to throw a punch, and that he's striking with rage and not focus. And such form will only hurt himself more than the thing that he intends to strike. And so from here, with Thor going on to ask him who he is, Lei Kung tells him, but then in response he asks Thor if he's made his way here seeking enlightenment, because if he has, unfortunately he's a little too late. But then when Thor tells him that he's come here seeking oblivion, Lei Kung lets him know that he knows why Thor is here, even if Thor doesn't. But with them saying this and addressing Thor as God of Thunder, Thor's then like, don't call me that, I am the God of nothing. But then next, Lei Kung opens a portal to Kung Lun. But before we head through there, I want to take a moment and tell you guys about this video sponsor, which is brought to you by Atop Throne Comics in their recent Kickstarter for the Draycox Awakens, which is a story about a kid named Michael who had a rough upbringing, jumping from one foster home to the other, and all this jumping around, it was pretty lonely for the kid, because all Michael really wanted was a friend who he could connect with and share his accomplishments with. But over time, with Michael becoming an expert in a vast range of different sciences, with him continually searching for something big, something amazing to occur, something eventually did happen, and now he has powers. But through the course of this story, we'll discover if Michael will use these powers for good, or if he'll let the pursuit of vengeance get the best of him. But with that said, I got a link down below where you can get your copy and dive in. And it also helps the channel out. But also, while you're over there, you can learn more about Atop Throne Comics, the creators, as well as their mission to tell stories that focus on inclusivity, whether it deals with race, gender, mental health awareness, disabilities, or sexuality. Because at Atop Throne Comics, they believe that there's a hero in everyone. So yeah, when you guys get a chance, use my link down in the description and get your copy of the Draycox Awakens today. But with jumping back in, it's here where we find as Lei Kung takes Thor to Kunlun, where he lets Thor know that the Masters of Evil had destroyed this place too, even with it being hidden in the veil between dimensions. But from here, he goes on to let Thor know that their army fought for days until their Iron Fist fell, and many others fell soon after, to where then the Masters of Evil burned everything that they found here, flesh and stone alike. But he then goes on to tell Thor, with the invaders' hunger for destruction and carnage, they didn't realize that one cannot burn a dragon. And it's here where Lei Kung takes Thor to the entrance of the chamber of the immortal dragon, Shao Lao. And he goes on to tell Thor that it's from the heart of the immortal dragon, where the greatest weapon of all the heavens was birthed, the almighty Iron Fist. But all it's missing is a living vessel. So he then asks Thor if he wants to get revenge upon those who had burned the heavens, to where then Thor is more or less like, who, me? Like, I've been nothing but unworthy. And as soon as he says this, Mjolnir then nudges him, which from there causes Thor to turn around swinging. But then it's here where Lei Kung puts the idea in Thor's head and lets him know that maybe his hands weren't made for lifting hammers, and perhaps his training has already begun. And from there he tells Thor to hit the hammer again and again, to where from here Thor begins his training, or better yet, as Lei Kung would describe, Thor continues his training. Because with Thor repeatedly punching this hammer, which is one of the strongest substances in all the realms, this buffets and builds the calluses on Thor's fists to the point of where they became hammers in their own right. Because throughout this training, Thor had been doing this for 30 days and 30 nights, while also sharpening his focus. But then after an additional 30 days, it was at this point when Mjolnir started to quiver, and all of a sudden the immovable Mjolnir began to dodge, which from here took Thor's training to the next step. But also with him seeing this progression, it encouraged him to punch it harder, because it was also like Thor had made the hammer no pain, which was something that was very new to Mjolnir. But after this phase of Thor's training, it came to a point where the hammer stopped dodging, and it started to fight back. But as this happens, it's here where Mjolnir just brews up this huge thunderstorm. He strikes at Thor, and Thor jumps out of the way, to where then Lei Kung tells Thor that this isn't just thunder, but instead this is the hammer in a panic, quaking in fear. And the hammer thinks that Thor can be defeated in a bit of a bluster, because it thinks that he's unworthy. And in the way of like your classic movie training montage, and let me know in the comments what's your favorite movie training montage music. And it can be film or anime, let's make that clear. But it's here where Lei Kung lets Thor know that this is his opportunity to show the hammer what kind of god he is. And he tells Thor that he's not the god of wind or rain, and he's not even the god of storms, but instead, he's the god that punches them. And I gotta say, when I saw this, I was like, yeah, it's pretty crazy. But for me, the training speech just kind of fell flat. I don't know, that's just me, I guess. But at this point now, with Thor punching the lightning, it's here where we find that he's beaten the hammer. He's broken its will. And at this point now, Thor has the option to lift the hammer. And Lei Kung tells him this, and he asks him, will he claim it? Will he lift the hammer from here? And in response, Thor says no. So then Lei Kung is like, okay, good. And then he just smacks Thor, because now the next step of his training is fighting him. And it's here where he lets Thor know that fighting a floating hammer isn't gonna quite cut it as far as making him worthy to be the Iron Fist. But when he goes on to tell Thor that he is the last trial, Thunderer versus Thunder God, and it's right here where Thor is like, I told you not to call me that. To where from here, Thor then gives Lei Kung his Asgardian one punch, which sends the Thunderer across Kunlun, crashing through the door that leads into the chamber of the immortal dragon Shao Lao. And really, it's after that one punch where Lei Kung is more or less like, okay, that's it, you pass. And he lets Thor know that it was an honor to train him and lead him to his destiny. But then he goes on to let Thor know that he's gotta come clean with him, because the immortal dragon is dead. Which is kind of a contradiction to the name, but I mean, here we are. But he goes on to let Thor know that eventually the dragon had withered, and that it was never Thor's destiny to become the Iron Fist, but also he wasn't actually training Thor to become the Iron Fist, or really to wield any new weapon for that matter, but instead he was training Thor to wield the weapons that he was already born with, the weapons that speak louder than thunder. To where from here he calls Thor the god of fists. And I mean, once again, I gotta say, the speech, it did feel underwhelming, much like the one we were given earlier, but two things come to mind with seeing this. Like, the first one is I would much rather see a powerful Thor who doesn't lift the hammer rather than seeing Thor become the Iron Fist. But then also, with the war that's to come, this guy better be able to throw hands. And I don't mean like on some regular exchanging blows with somebody, but I'm gonna need this dude to one-punch doom the living planet. And then I'll be like, okay, yeah, this guy's valid. But at this point, with Thor completing his training and becoming the god of fists, he makes his way to go after the Masters of Evil, and he allows Mjolnir to tag along. But at this point, with him not being sure how he's gonna make his way to them, it's right here where Robbie Reyes and Tony Stark show up. And they're more or less like, hey man, you looking for a ride? And just like that, the Thor of Earth 56-337 joins the team as they prepare for the all-out war against the Masters of Evil. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.